my start in cash grains, and I added corn, and which was a big seller because it was a component of nearly every feed, and then wheat, because it made it was a good rotational crop to have, and you plant it in the fall, and then if you ran out of hay, you could actually graze it in the spring with cattle and then still get a crop off of it. And I also raised buckwheat, which I had ground at a local mill and sold under my own brand name, Floyd County Buckwheat, to stores in the area. And eventually I added a corn cracker and a feed mixer so I could make a complete ration. I kept hog feed, chicken feed, cow feed, and if somebody wanted a custom ration, all they had to do was give me the recipe and I could mix them up whatever they wanted. And that allowed me to market my corn a lot more efficiently than if I had say put it in a truck and taken it down to Big Spring Mill or something like that. And I managed to make a living. It was touch and go a lot of years because some years crops do better than others, and, but I was always able to sell every sack of feed that I ever produced. And at first it was farmers that were coming in and buying stuff, but they died or retired, but they got replaced by people that basically had moved into the county with the notion of being able to have a milk cow, and some chickens, and a little bit of land. And they weren't necessarily trying to make a living off the land, but they wanted to live that way, that lifestyle. And they encouraged me actually to raise my prices because they didn't so much care about the price as the quality of the feed. And that was the one place I could really compete, was when it came to quality, because I had a hand in every phase of the operation, from planting, picking, cleaning the grain, and sacking it, and grinding it, and mixing it, and whatever. And some people used to call them back to the landers, but I called them customers. They showed up, and they were good customers because I never lost a nickel on any of them, which is, for a retail business, that's really unusual. Years ago, when I lived in West Virginia, I worked in a retail business, and we would take a bad check or two just about every week. But if anybody ever bounced a check on me, they always made it right. And over half of what I took in was cash money. So I had a real good bunch of customers. Probably in any given year I would have maybe as many as 60 different customers. And some would just show up, and if I was here, I'd load their truck, and some would load their own truck and then hide the money somewhere and call to tell me where it was. And I made a point to be here on Saturdays to make custom rations for people. And when I quit, in the next year, corn doubled. And that was what I call the gasohol fiasco that the government sponsored, where they were taking feed corn and turning it into alcohol and putting it into gasoline. But I'd done all I could do. I couldn't lift another sack of corn with my arthritic limbs, so I was glad that at least somebody made a buck on some corn. But I kept cattle, and cattle right now are doing the best they've ever done in the 40-some years I've been fooling with them. But of course, when one farmer's making $1 one place, it usually means some farmer somewhere else is losing it. In this case, the drought in the West has decimated so many herds that the cow numbers in this country now are about what they were in 1950, whereas the population, and the beef-eating population, has grown substantially since that time. And of course, another factor is farmers are getting older, and in my case, I'm not keeping more cows just because the price is high. I'm doing all I can do, and I think a lot of the older farmers that have had to sell their herds because of the drought are reluctant to go back in, because right now they'd be buying these high-priced heifers, and they might not live long enough or be able to work long enough to see a payout. Farming's a really tough business. It's tough physically, mentally, and it's got some advantages, but being your own boss and being able to work your own schedule. And in my case, I enjoyed working outside with crops and cattle and machinery. But you hear a lot of talk about sustainability now. Well, you've got to make a profit if you're going to sustain your farm, because they'll come back and repossess your machinery and eventually take your land if you can't turn a dollar over your expenses. And farmers are at a real disadvantage when it comes to buying their inputs, because there's not a lot of competition in places that sell to farmers. And I'll bet you could go in the springtime, go over to southern states in Hillsville, southern states in Montgomery County, and C.W. Harmon's down here, and what they would sell you a ton of fertilizer for would be within pennies on the ton. And that tells you they pretty much got together and agreed they're not going to compete on price. And of course, but one good thing, if you buy enough stuff off of them, they'll furnish your headgear